Hey everyone, in this video I will show you how I made this stylized tree in Blender with the help of the Brushstroke Tools add-on. Let's start by deleting the default cube and adding a cylinder instead. Set the vertex count to 8. Keeping it low poly makes everything easier to manage later on. Now select the top face and move it up to define the overall height of the tree. Then throw in a few edge loops so we can start playing around with the thickness and the shape of the trunk. For the branch, we're going to start with a single vertex. Just drop it in, move it into position, and begin extruding to shape out the branch. Once you have got a shape you like, go ahead and duplicate it. We will be using that copy later. Once the shape's there, add a skin modifier to give it some thickness. To adjust the thickness, hit Ctrl A and scale the vertices as needed. Next up, let's apply the skin modifier, and go ahead and clean things up by deleting any edge loops we don't really need. Now, to duplicate the branch, we will use an array modifier with object offset enabled. For the offset object, we will use an empty set to plane axis, positioned right at the branch origin. Once that's in place, rotating the empty by 90 degrees gives us a nice circular distribution of branches. To add more variation, just duplicate the array modifier and the empty. Then set the duplicated empty as a new target object and rotate it 45 degrees to offset the next set of branches. For a second level of branches, it's the same idea. Duplicate everything again, but this time move the empty upward and scale it down a bit to match the tree overall silhouette. Now, let's take the duplicated branch and turn it into our leaf structure. Jump into edit mode, select the edges and extrude them out. Then use the move tool to shape them into something more leafy and organic. Once that's done, we can duplicate them just like we did with the branches. Just select the new leaf mesh and copy the modifiers. And don't forget, make sure the visibility is turned on so everything shows up properly. Before we jump into the tree, I want to quickly introduce the add-on. First things first, we need to enable the extension. Just head over to Edit, open up Preferences, click on Extensions, and search for the Brushstroke Tools. Now, as you can see, I've got a simple scene setup. Just two planes and a stand for the lighting. To start using the add-on, open the Brushstroke Tool tab. And one important thing, make sure your mesh already has UVs, otherwise the tool won't work properly. Alright, so once you open the tool, you will notice we have two main options, Fill and Draw. For this project, we are going to stick with the Fill option. It floods the surface of your mesh with brush strokes, and you can control them through a whole bunch of settings in the Shape panel. Most of these settings are pretty self-explanatory, things like brush width, brush length, brush scale, and density. You will also find options to add some variation to your strokes, like stroke noise and random tilt, to make everything feel a bit more natural. If you want to control the direction of the strokes, you have two ways to do it. You can click on Edit Flow and manually draw the direction you want, or you can use the Select Surface to pick your mesh, go into Edit mode, select an edge, press Ctrl-Alt-F, and set a brush flow from there. Now, if you want to change the color and the brush style, just head over to the Material tab. You can tweak the brush color, or if you prefer, you can disable that option and adjust the overall color manually. Plus, there is a handy color variation slider if you want a bit more randomness in the tones. To change the brush style, just scroll down and pick the one that fits the vibe you're aiming for. And one last thing before we move on. If you want your strokes to cast proper shadows, jump into the Settings tab and enable Shadow Visibility. My best advice here is just to play around with all the parameters and see what they do. Alright, now let's jump back into the tree and continue with the tutorial. Now, just like we did earlier, select your mesh, head over to the Brushstroke Tool tab, choose Fill, and hit Select Surface. Then, go into Edit mode, pick an edge, and select the brush flow. From there, just tweak the parameters until you get the look you are going for. Once you're happy with it, repeat the same steps for the rest of your objects. Alright, here is a quick tip to add a gradient color variation to your brushstrokes. Open the shader editor and select the brushstroke material. You will notice there's already a color group. We're going to swap out the RGB node for our own setup. Start by adding a gradient texture node, then press Ctrl T to automatically drop in the texture coordinate and mapping nodes. Next, add a color ramp node and rotate the mapping's y-axis to 90 degrees. From there, tweak the color ramp stops, change the colors, and play with the positions until you get a nice gradient effect. And finally, just replace the original RGB node with a new setup, and you are done. To give our tree a more organic shape, we are going to use a Lattice Modifier. It's a great way to deform objects while keeping everything non-destructive. Start by adding a lattice and scale it to match the size of your tree. Then adjust its resolution. Lower values are easier to control, but feel free to tweak it depending on how much flexibility you want. Once you're happy with the setup, select all, press Ctrl P and choose Lattice Deform to link it to the tree. Now just select the lattice, jump into edit mode and start pushing and pulling points until you get a shape that feels more natural. This next part is just a little bonus. I will show you how I set up a quick render. Let's start with the shadow catcher. First, add a diffuse shader, then run it through a shader to RGB node and connect that to a color ramp. Next, drop in an emission and a transparent shader and mix them using a mix shader. Set the emission color to pure black, and finally plug the color ramp into the factor input of the mix shader. That's the base, and with this setup you will be able to isolate your shadow cleanly for compositing. Now inside the shader editor, switch from object to world and change the background color. In my case, I went with a dark blue for a nice evening feel. For lighting, we're going to use a basic 3 light setup: an area light as a key light, a point light for the rim light, and a sun light to cast shadows. To make the area light easier to control, we can add a constraint. Just open the right hand panel, go to Constraints, click Add Object Constraint, and choose Drag to. Set the tree as a target, and now your light will always face it. Super useful for quick adjustments. From there, you can move the area light to match the direction of the sunlight and keep everything looking cohesive. to wrap things up, I want to show you another little bonus, how I use compositing to finish off the final render. Once the render is done, I jump into the compositor and add a contrast node to bring out the details, and a color correction node to tweak the gain just a bit. A nice trick here is enable the compositor preview in the 3D viewport. That way you can keep adjusting things like the lighting on materials until you get the exact look you're after. And that's it. Thanks a lot for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me to keep making more content like this. See you in the next one. Bye.